Hi everyone, welcome back to another library lunch hour. My name is Saba and I'm the Special Projects Assistant here at Centro and your host for today's library lunch hour, Unboxing the Archives, Contemporary Lit, curated by the Library and Archives. Today we will be joined by Aníbal, our library manager, who will be unboxing and displaying the contemporary literature pieces that we have at our library, including our latest editions across diverse genres and subject areas. We also want to know what you'd like to see in our upcoming library lunch hours, and we'll be dropping a link in our chat to a form to get your feedbacks toward the end. And without any further ado, I'll hand it off to Aníbal so that we can get started. Thank you.
Morning or good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for joining us again. Another library lunch hour and another library unboxing where we share some of the new titles in the library and with the hope to be inspired to add these materials to your collections as well. And if you have any questions about these materials, you can always follow up with us. If you'd like to make an appointment to come view the materials, we'll be providing make appointments as well. So I'm going to get started because we have a lot of books to go through. We're buying a lot of great titles. So the first one is being used by one of our research associates. So I don't have the title actual book in hand, but it is this one right here. And the category New York's Vogue House and Ballroom Community, and this is by Ricky Tucker. And what is ballroom? Not a song, a documentary, a catchphrase, or an individual pop star. It is an underground subculture founded by LGBTQ African American and Latino men and women of art space and intersectional. It transcends identity, acting as a fearless systemic marginalization of minority populations. So these titles. Next we have Boat People by this. And this is a new translation by Vanessa. Mayra Santofebres' Boat People sloshes against the category and indexical violence of logistics and discipline, colonial structures of containment into the uncontainable sea through sound and song. Boat People, the same in the original as in the translations, begins with contradictions, its self-claiming of peoplehood of migrants. This volume of 20 poems by Puerto Rican poet Santos Febre, resisting colonization and the legacies of enslavement, the seas touch the middle passage, and the new middle passages, the afterlives of slaves. Next, we have a children's book, and this is Broken Butterfly Wings. This is Alas de Mariposa Rotas, and this is by Raquel M. Ortiz, a longtime Centro. Gabriela is super excited when Sylvia finally arrives. She loves the colorful, glittery butterfly wings in the middle of her room and flaps her new wings, but nothing happens. She jumps, moving the wings up and down, but again, nada. She hops downstairs, but she still can't fly. So appreciate the beauty of the rainforest birds, frogs, and other natural wonders while admiring to create solutions to problems, in this case, how to fly. So we try to curate a collection of for all ages and interests. Again, if you have any questions, please feel free to put them in the chat. Also, my colleagues will be sharing information about where you can get more information about the book in the chat. The next one is the Centro Journal. If you are not a subscriber to the Centro Journal, on our webpage, you can buy individual issues or you can buy and this is volume 33, number 3 from fall of 2021. Some of the articles inside the journal are Hurricane Maria on Education and Students in Puerto Rico, Dream, The Great Gatsby, Bodega Dreams, and the Colonial Difference, and Light, Centering Blackness as Practice in Everyday Afro-Puerto Rican Spiritualities. Another good issue of the Central Journal, peer-reviewed, highly regarded journal that Centro produces. In addition to all the other things that Centro does. Let's see. Here we go. Communities of the Soul, A Short History of Religion in Puerto Rico. And this is by Jose Igaltua. Religion is fundamental to contemporary Puerto Rican society. To the indigenous Taino, to the wide range of churches and sects, to the practitioners of spiritism, Afro and witchcraft, religious practice in its many forms permeates the lives. Communities of the Soul illuminates the landscape and history of religion in Puerto Rico, from the beliefs and practices of the Taino to the religious diversity of present. Okay. Next one is Counter Institution, Activist Estates, Lower East Side. And this one is by Nandi. In the midst of current debates about the accessible spaces resurfacing as a result of highly visible demonstrations and occupation, this book illuminates an overlooked domain of civic participation. The office work activist groups meet to organize and plan acts of political dissent and collaboration. Author Nandini Bagchi repurposed buildings on the Lower East Side that have been used by activists for the past 40 years. El Bohío and was a metaphoric hut that envisioned the Puerto Rican community as a steward of the environment. Next, we have another book about the Lower East Side. This one's a DIY on the Lower East Side by Andrew Strombeck. The severe financial austerity imposed on New York City during the 1975 fiscal crisis resulted in part, broken windows, crumbling walls, and piles of bricks. While for many, this physical decay was a sign that the state had failed, for others, it represented a site of risky opportunity to stimulate novel forms of creativity and community. Here we have how everyday forms of racial categorization survived imperialist censuses in Puerto Rico. And this is by Rebecca Jean Emmy and Patricia Ahmed Riley. This book examines the history of racial classification in censuses, starting with the Spanish censuses and continuing through the US. Rican censuses were collected regularly over hundreds of years. They are factors to see what the census categories might have been available and affect everyday ones. So if you're interested in census and how it's racialized, this is an interesting book. Next, we have a book about Hurricane Maria. Hurricane Maria in Puerto Rico, Disaster, Vulnerability, and Resiliency. And this is edited by Javidan Rodriguez, Marie T. Mora, and Alberto Davila. Scholars from a wide variety of disciplines, including economics, sociology, demography, health, psychology, political science. This volume represents one of the first interdisciplinary sets of dedicated to analyzing the effects of Hurricane Maria on island and specific topics cover Hurricane Maria's impact on labor market, including wages and employment by industry, including mental health changes, civic engagement, response, and recovery. Here's a book of short stories. Hungry, but I Could Eat by Christopher Gonzalez. Long nights, empty stomachs, and impulsive cravings haunt the stories of I'm not hungry, but I. A college grad reunites with a high school crush when invited to its bachelor party. A cat sitter wreaks havoc on his friend's apartment. Happy hour French fries leave more than grease on lips and fingers, and squeezed into a diner booth, one man eats past his limit for the sake of friendship. Lives of bisexual and gay Puerto Rican men, these 15 stories show a vulnerability of yearning and desire. The stars of these narratives linger with selves and remaining in the wings, embarking on a journey to satisfy their hunger for companionship and belonging. And I'm going through these books in alphabetical order, if anyone is curious. And as you can see, we're doing everything. We got some poetry, we got some short stories, we've got books about Hurricane Maria, books about linguistics, books about. So this one is Linguistic Discrimination in U.S. Education, edited by Galen Joe Petre. This volume examines different forms of language and dialect in U.S. college campuses where relevant protections in K-12 schools are absent. Real-world case studies at intersections with and ability explore pedagogical and social manifestations, impacts of prejudice between and among students, faculty, and administrators. Here we have Making Livable Worlds, Afro-Puerto Rican Women Building Environmental Justice by Hilda Llorens. When hurricanes Irma and Maria made landfall in Puerto Rico in September 2017, there was further devastated the archipelago already pummeled by economic, political upheaval and environmental calamities. To navigate Afro-Puerto Rican women have drawn from their cultural knowledge to daily improvisations that enable survive and thrive. Their life-affirming practices developed over generations offer powerful modes of resistance to gendered exploitation. Okay. Olga Dies Dreaming, a novel. It's 2017 and Olga and her brother Pedro Prieto Acevedo are bold-faced names in their hometown of. Prieto is a popular congressman representing their gentrifying Latin in Brooklyn, while Olga is the Tony wedding planner power brokers. Set against the backdrop of New York City, the most devastating hurricane in Puerto Rico's history, Xochitl Gonzalez is a story that examines political corruption, familial strife, and the American dream, all while asking what it really means to weather a storm. Here we have one that I interesting. And this is a topic that I think merits more exploration. And it is Parenting Empires, Class, Whiteness, and the Moral Economy of Privilege in Latin America. And this is by Ana Y. Ramos Zayas. In Parenting Empires, Zayas focuses on the parenting practices of Latin American urban elite, analyze how everyday experiences of whiteness, privilege, and inequality reinforce national and hemispheric idioms of anti-corruption. Ramos Zayas shows that for upper-class affluent neighborhoods of Ipanema and Rio de Janeiro, El Condado, and parenting is particularly effective in providing moral grounding projects that disadvantage the overwhelmingly poor as people who care and teach for their children. I see stuff right there. All right. We have here a book about Chicago, Puerto Ricans in Chicago, for all my Chicago people here. Schooling the City, 1940 to 1970 by Maricel Velázquez. Of Puerto Rican men and women to Chicago brought thousands of their children into children's classroom experience, continued the colonial project begun where American ideologies had dominated Puerto Rican education in a U.S. territory. A perceptive look at building Puerto Rican Chicago reveals the links between justice and education and space in their new home. For all the Chicago, and all for the educators as well. If you're interested in transition of Puerto Rican children to the States, it was a great book. Thanks. Oh, I got another title that I and because it is still the printers. It is, but I do have this one sheet. Puerto Rican Studies in the City University of New York, the first 50. This is published by Centro, and it is a retrospective of Puerto Rican Studies in CUNY. It's edited by Maria Elizabeth Perez and Virginia Sanchez Corol. Authored by leading scholars Rican and Latinx studies, this volume is an important milestone in documenting the power of collective consciousness and action to create change in access to higher education for all people. The comprehensive 50-year trajectory in the field of Puerto Rican studies at the City University in a series of critical essays on scholarship, social sciences, bilingual media, and its counterparts beyond CUNY. Okay. That's you can visit the Centro website for more information on how to purchase of Puerto Rican Studies 50 years at CUNY. Another excellent Centro production. We have Side by Side. This is a great cover. U.S. Empire, Puerto Rico, and the Roots of American Youth Culture by Marilisa Jimenez Garcia. Puerto Rico and the Roots of American Youth Literature and Culture. Marilisa Jimenez Garcia focuses on the contributions of the Puerto Rican community to American youth and Latinx literature as a transnational space that provides a critical understanding the lingering consequences of U.S. and Spanish colonialism of color. Through analysis of texts typically outside traditional Latin, such as young adult literature, textbooks, television, and youth movements, Side by Side represents the only comprehensive study of Puerto Ricans to American youth literature and culture. This is a many of you might be familiar with, but they have edition in English, Taino and Caribs, the Aboriginal cultures of the Antilles. And this, this topic of the Taino people remains a popular topic. And we do try to get material that is in English and in Spanish. This is by Sebastián Robiu Lamarche. The book, published originally titled Tainos y Caribes, Las Culturas Aborígenes Antillas, has been recognized as having contributed to a better understanding among the general history of the Antillean cultures before, during, and after the arrival. Based on diverse primary resources, Robiu Lamarche offers a great an in-depth analysis of Taino chiefdoms and Carib tribe, explored as a whole, pointing elegantly to their and their specificities. Okay. Here we have The Caribbean City it's edited by Rivka Jaffe, and its cities are a unique yet underexposed phenomenon. They're distinct from a combination of interrelated factors, including a history of slavery, hemispheric hegemony of the United States, and spatial limitations imposed by the setting urban areas. The innovative volume presents the spatial, sociocultural, and economic characteristics of the Caribbean, followed by case studies in Dutch, Hispanophone, and Francophone Caribbean. A broad range of disciplinary approaches in examining the urban Caribbean, including perspectives from anthropology, sociology, political science, geographical criticism. Here we have The Way of the Saints by Elizabeth. It's a multi-generational historical collection of short stories, author's family, and her personal experiences as the daughter of a Santeria priestess. Stories explore how religious and superstitious narratives, along with years of colonization, has shaped the Puerto Rican experience. Taken together, these stories become an exploration of identity and self-determination, oppressive regimes, hungry spirits, and dominating mothers. Elizabeth Engelman is the recipient of the Marianne Rousseau Emerging Writer. So the book of short stories. This is from America's Society. This Must Be the Place. Latin American artists in New York, 1965 to 1970. America's Society presents a two-part group exhibition exploring the work of a generation created and exhibited in New York City between 1965 and 1970. Featuring installation, photography, video art, painting, and archival material, the exhibition brings together a generation that actively participated in experiments while pushing forward their own visual languages and ideas. Works exploring topics of migration, identity politics, nostalgia. So pretty interesting. Got some what is going on in this exhibition here. I think we're coming to our last handful of books here. We have book of oral histories of survivors, Tossed to the Wind, stories, and this is edited by Maria T. Rosado. In Tossed to the Wind, Maria Padilla interviewed Puerto Ricans from all walks of life who now live in Orlando and fight every day to pick up the pieces of their world after Hurricane Maria. Evacuees describe families living temporarily out of motels, anxious about providing for their children, children starting new schools, and worried about the families and friends they left behind. Told from loss, these are stories filled with pain and wisdom, sadness and laughter that showcase the strength and resolve of Puerto Ricans. Here we have a book of poetry. This is Sal by Urayoan Noel. Transversal takes a disruptive approach to poetic translation, opening up reading as poems get translated or transcreated into pieces. In this collection, Urayoan Noel masterfully examines and broader Caribbean as sites of transversal poetics, featuring Noel's bilingual playfulness, intellect, and imagination. Transversal contains personal reflections of desire and loss, filtered through a queer approach to form, expanding upon Noel's experiments with self-translation in his celebrated buzzing hemisphere, Rumor Hemisférico. We have another cool, and again, this is from frequent Centro piece and Iris Morales. So this is an exciting combination of people. Inspired by 1969, the book recounts what happened in East Harlem, New York, when lords united with residents to make positive neighborhood changes. The story follows Vicky and her older sister Valencia, who live in East Harlem. Brian comes to streets because city sanitation trucks rarely pick up the trash. Determined, the young lords start sweeping the streets. Neighbors jump in eagerly, and Vicky joins them. You're never too young to make a difference, her sister says. Together, they discover they can help change their community and the world. Vicky and the Summer of Change, Vicky y un verano de cambio, is a bilingual book, 5 to 8. Topics of social and environmental justice are presented in an age-appropriate way. And let's just, and this is really great art as well. The illustrations are by Sabrina Cintrón and Edgardo Miranda Rodriguez. This is the trash offensive as illustration. Many of you are familiar with the history of the trash as one of the acts of protests that the young lords carried out in East Harlem. Really phenomenal stuff here. I think it's really a great way to introduce your children and to the history of Puerto Ricans in the activist community. And the last one is contemporary plays and performance pieces by Latinas. Elizabeth C. Ramirez and Catherine Casiano. Ramirez and Catherine Casiano bring together a collection of plays and perform innovative Latina playwrights, surveying Latina theater in the United States to the 21st century. The editors present works displaying a variety of forms and genres, expanding the field of Latina theater while in the larger spectrum of American stage and performance studies. Ramirez and Casiano provide historical context and a production history for each work, and a biography of the art and artistic statements from each playwright. So this is a thoroughly well-researched anthology of theater, and the just Puerto Rican playwrights have La Gringa by Carmen Rivera is Migdalia Cruz, another. So Migdalia Cruz is another one of the rights. And I thought there was one more. Oh, you'll just have to come check it out. And so that that brings us to the Q&A portion of the day. Thank you so much for sticking around. I'm surprised. I'm always surprised how many people participate in these unboxing events. So I see we have two questions. How does one approach Centro about curating or publishing? For example, doctoral dissertation about the life of Ruth Reynolds, whose archives reside at Centro. Okay, so if you want to do Centro materials, I would recommend you email Centro email address, and If you have a proposal in mind about conducting research with a specific topic for publication, we'll be able to provide you a materials and continue the discussion. Is Centro still collecting videos and documentaries? It's an excellent question. Yeah, actually, we are. We videos and documentaries specifically on Puerto Rican topics and Puerto Rican. Any current books by Latinx artists? It's a very good. I haven't seen any in any of the lists that I've looked at recently, but that doesn't mean that there was some might have been overlooked. With me via email, so I can do a little research on this, and then I can fully fleshed out answer. Okay. We have another one. I look forward to reading many of them. I was hoping you'd say something about my book, Tales from the Barrio and Beyond. Oh yeah, absolutely. I mean, yeah, one of the I couldn't fit everything into the span of time, but yes, an excellent book of short stories based the Puerto Rican experiences in East Harlem, Puerto Rico Tales and Beyond. Thank you so much. It's a great title. The doctoral dissertations. We do. We doctoral dissertations quarterly. So quarterly we reach out to dissertations that are related to topics within Puerto Rican studies in general, and also about more specific topics relating to Puerto Rico or Puerto Ricans. We try to buy material that would be of interest to areas of research that we're seeing a lot of activity in. So sometimes we don't buy everything. So maybe a dissertation, chemistry of a specific in Puerto Rico or something like that. Maybe we wouldn't purchase that, but we do buy. What presses aside from Centro PR do you find public in studies? That's a good question. And great things from the Puerto Rican studies, Duke University. What else? Arte Público. There's a lot of small press in Puerto Rico. Cultura publishes. There's Instituto de Línea, which also publishes. Those can be a little trickier to find. You need to contact specific vendors in Puerto Rico to get that material. But there is still a lot of publication about Puerto Rican studies. Periodic listing available. We're gonna available via our website, and also I think we're newsletter as well. We usually update the website with the new, and our collection can be searched within the Hunter Library catalog. Will this list and authors be available for us somewhere? That they will be followed up. I have dissertations on Ruth Reynolds. I did the long oral history with Ruth, public program about her contributions. I would have to do some research, but reach out to me individually. I can look into that for you to see if we have specific. Another book recommended is Maricel Vera, The Taste of Sugar. It is fictional, but also research about the experience of Puerto Ricans. Yeah, we have that book in our collection, and it was featured in the library lunch hour. In the 1970s WNET weekly program titled Realidades, does Centro have copies for the public college site? Yes, we have an almost complete run of Realidades. Watch here in our library reading room. Should you want to make an appointment, we can set you up so you can watch. Last week we had library lunch hour with Chris, who was working on a documentary relating to, and she did a lot of her research that we have here. So we also have the series Visiones, which is another interesting television series relating to Puerto Rican topics. Okay, well, thank you, everyone. It was a lot of questions and a lot of great titles. Obviously, this thing that is published, nor is it everything that we buy that can fit in the 25 minutes or so that I have here to share with all of you today. But I do appreciate you taking the time and sharing your lunch hour with me a little bit more about the resources available at Centro. And we look forward in another couple of weeks with some more programming for you. Thanks again. I want to thank everyone who continues to send us positive, great emails with people sharing what experience they're having at our library lunch hours. So please email at the email address is in the chat, but it is centro.library@hunter.cuny.edu. And also there is a form that you can fill out if you want to make an appointment. You can visit Centro Monday through Friday at 5 p.m., but you have to make an appointment so we can get you cleared to enter our facility. So thank you very much, everyone. Have a good rest of your day, a great rest of your week.